I, 25M, have an older brother Thomas, 28M, and a younger sister Emma, 17F. I'm the middle child in a typical middle-class family, currently pursuing my Ph.D. in bioengineering while working as a research assistant. I'm married to Rachel, 25F, whom I met in grad school, and we have a 2-year-old son, Ethan. To understand my current situation, you need to know the history. Our family dynamics have always revolved around Thomas, the golden child. But it wasn't just typical firstborn favoritism, it was a systematic pattern that shaped our entire family life. My earliest memory of this favoritism dates back to elementary school. I was 7, and Thomas was 10. He had just failed his math test, not because he couldn't do it, but because he spent the night before playing video games instead of studying. Mom's response? She blamed the teacher for not understanding his learning style and bought him a new gaming console to reduce his stress. Meanwhile, I was maintaining straight A's while tutoring younger kids in the school's math club. The pattern continued throughout our childhood. Every Christmas, Thomas would get the latest gadgets and games, while I received practical gifts like textbooks or scientific calculators. Mom would justify this by saying, Thomas needs more encouragement to find his path. I remember one Christmas when I asked for a microscope, a real one, not a toy. Instead, they spent that money on Thomas's third guitar, even though the previous 2 were collecting dust in his room. High school really highlighted the disparity. I was taking advanced placement classes, leading the science club, and working part-time at a local pharmacy to save for college. Thomas? He was on his 3rd attempt at regular algebra, skipping classes, and discovering himself through a series of expensive hobbies. Each time he found a new interest, photography, rock climbing, DJ&G, our parents would invest hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in equipment. The science fair incident in 10th grade still stings. I had developed a project on antibiotic resistance, spending months culturing bacteria, safely, under my science teacher's supervision, and analyzing data. I won first place at the state level and qualified for nationals. Mom's response? That's nice, honey. But did you hear? Thomas got a C+ in English. We're going out to celebrate his improvement. They spent more on that celebration dinner than they did helping me get to the national competition, which I had to partially fund through my pharmacy job. When college applications came around, I had a 4.0 GPA, was valedictorian, and had already published a paper in a junior science journal. Thomas had barely graduated, with a 2.1 GPA. Guess who got the bigger celebration? Mom organized a huge party for Thomas, overcoming his challenges, while my acceptance to a prestigious bioengineering program was announced via a quick Facebook post. The financial aspect of college really exposed the inequality. My parents had supposedly saved for both our educations, but Thomas burned through his share in 2 years, switching majors 4 times. When he decided to find himself at an expensive private art school, they remortgaged the house. Meanwhile, I was working 3 jobs to cover my textbooks and lab fees. Then came my first major breakthrough in undergraduate research. I was part of a team developing a new method for studying drug-resistant bacteria. We were making real progress, and I was first author on a paper published in a respected journal. The day I got the acceptance email, I rushed home to share the news. I found Mom on the phone, excitedly discussing Thomas's latest venture. He had decided to drop art school and try business instead. My news had to wait until she finished a 2-hour call about Thomas's entrepreneurial spirit. Meeting Rachel changed everything. It was late one night in the advanced biochemistry lab. I was running tests on bacterial cultures, and she was the only other person still there, working on her own project. We got talking about our research, and for the first time, someone was genuinely interested in my work. She asked detailed questions, offered insights, and shared her own passion for molecular biology. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a routine of late-night lab work and deep conversations. Rachel came from a family of scientists, her parents were both researchers, and they had always supported her academic pursuits. Hearing her talk about family dinners where scientific achievements were celebrated, where curiosity was encouraged, where academic success wasn't compared to anyone else's journey, it opened my eyes to how different things could be. Our first date wasn't even planned. We had been analyzing data until 2 a.m., and she suggested getting coffee at the 24-hour diner near campus. We ended up talking until sunrise about everything: our research, our dreams, our families. When I told her about Thomas and my parents' favoritism, she didn't just sympathize, she helped me see how deeply unfair it was. "Nathan," she said, looking at me over her third cup of coffee, "do you realize that what you're doing, your research, your dedication to science, it's not just good, it's exceptional? You're working on solutions to antibiotic resistance, one of the biggest medical challenges we face. That's not just an accomplishment, it's potentially life-saving work." As our relationship grew, so did my confidence in my choices. Rachel came from a world where academic achievement was valued for itself, not as a comparison point. Her parents, both PhDs in their fields, took more interest in my research in one dinner conversation than my family had shown in years. The contrast became even starker when we started attending conferences together. While I was presenting our research findings at a national symposium, Thomas was starting his 6th different college program. My parents couldn't attend my presentation because they were helping Thomas move to yet another new apartment for his fresh start. Starting grad school should have been one of the brightest moments of my life. I had earned a prestigious fellowship, and my research proposal on novel approaches to combating antibiotic-resistant bacteria had received significant attention. Rachel and I were both accepted into the same program, and we had just gotten engaged. But even this achievement was overshadowed by family drama. The day I received my acceptance letter, I called home to share the news. Mom answered, and before I could even tell her, she launched into a 30-minute monologue about Thomas's latest crisis. He had dropped out of his 6th college program and needed $15,000 to start a revolutionary business idea. When I finally got to mention my acceptance and fellowship, her response was telling: "Oh, that's nice. But about Thomas's business plan?" The breaking point came during my 3rd year of grad school. I was making significant progress in my research, having identified a promising compound that could potentially help combat certain resistant bacterial strains. The preliminary results were exciting enough that our lab was discussing patent possibilities. That's when Mom called me in for what I thought would be a routine discussion about tuition. "We need you to take a break from school," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Thomas needs the money more right now. He's starting a new program, and you know how important it is for him to find his path." I was stunned. "Mom, I'm in the middle of critical research. We're talking about potential medical breakthroughs here." "Well," she replied, as if suggesting I skip a movie night, "you could get a full-time job for a while. Help support the family. Thomas really needs this chance." The chance in question would have been Thomas's 7th attempt at higher education. By this point, he had accumulated over $100,000 in debt from various failed ventures, all of which our parents had helped finance. Meanwhile, I was working on research that could potentially save lives. Rachel was furious when I told her about Mom's request. "They want you to give up your research, your future, your potential contribution to medical science, so Thomas can have another chance to waste money? That's not just unfair, it's irresponsible." She was right, of course. Instead of dropping out, I took out additional student loans and picked up extra research assistant hours. Rachel and I got married in a small ceremony, keeping costs minimal. My parents attended but spent most of the reception talking about Thomas's latest business idea, a premium dog walking service that never materialized. When Ethan was born 2 years ago, it forced me to reevaluate everything. Holding my newborn son, watching him discover the world with such pure curiosity, I made a promise. He would grow up in a home where achievement is celebrated, where effort is rewarded, where comparison isn't a weapon. Our lives aren't luxurious. Rachel and I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment near the university. We both work extra hours in the lab, me on my bacterial resistance research, her on her project studying cellular regeneration. We've managed to establish a stable, if tight, budget. Every month, we put a small amount aside for Ethan's future education. The real cost has been emotional. Emma, my younger sister, is watching all of this unfold during her crucial teenage years. She's brilliant in her own right, especially in mathematics, but she's seeing firsthand how our family prioritizes Thomas's endless fresh starts over actual achievement. Last month, Emma came to stay with us for a weekend. She was supposed to be studying for her SATs, but instead, she broke down crying at our kitchen table. "What's the point?" she asked. "Mom and Dad spent my college fund on Thomas's latest business idea. They say I should consider community college because that's all they can afford now." The irony is painful. Thomas has burned through enough money to fund both Emma's and my education several times over. The latest figures I calculated showed that our parents had spent over $200,000 on Thomas's various educational attempts and failed businesses. That's not counting the second mortgage they took out to cover his debts. My research is actually going well, despite everything. We're in the final stages of testing our new compound, and the results are promising. I'm close to finishing my dissertation, and there's serious interest from a major pharmaceutical research lab for a postdoc position. Rachel's work is also gaining recognition. She just received a grant to expand her research team. Aunt Diana tries to mediate sometimes. She's the only one in the family who seems to see the situation clearly. Recently, she visited us and spent time watching me work with Ethan on his toy microscope. "You're breaking the cycle," she said quietly. "It's hard, but you're doing the right thing." The latest development came when Mom found out about my potential postdoc position. Instead of congratulations, she immediately started talking about how Thomas is considering going back to school again, his 8th attempt, and how the family needs to pull together to support him. I've started seeing a therapist to work through all this. She's helping me understand that my responsibility isn't to enable my brother's chronic academic failures, but to provide a stable, healthy environment for my own son. Ethan deserves to grow up seeing that hard work and dedication matter, that science and discovery are valuable pursuits, that success doesn't have to come at someone else's expense. Rachel and I are building something real. Our research has the potential to help people. We're raising our son in an environment of intellectual curiosity and emotional support. We're showing Emma that there's another way to be family, one that celebrates genuine achievement and supports real growth. The guilt still creeps in sometimes, especially when Mom sends those long, emotional texts about family obligation. But then I look at Ethan, already showing signs of the same scientific curiosity that drove me to my career, and I know I'm making the right choice. I've learned that sometimes love means setting boundaries, even with family. It means breaking toxic patterns, even if that makes you the bad guy in your parents' eyes. It means choosing to build a better future, even if that means letting go of unhealthy past relationships. So here I am, at a crossroads. My research could help address one of the biggest medical challenges of our time. My marriage is strong, my son is thriving, and my sister is starting to see that she has options beyond our family's dysfunctional patterns. But according to my parents, I'm selfish for not sacrificing all of this to fund Thomas's next venture. I guess what I'm really asking is, am I wrong for maintaining these boundaries? Should I feel guilty for protecting my own family's stability instead of enabling my brother's chronic irresponsibility? The answers seem obvious when I write them out, but decades of family conditioning are hard to shake. For now, I'm focusing on finishing my dissertation, advancing our research, and being the kind of father Ethan deserves. Maybe someday my parents will understand, but I can't keep putting my life on hold waiting for that day to come. Update 1. It's been a typical Tuesday evening when my mom called, her voice carrying that familiar mix of urgency and expectation that always makes my stomach knot. "Nathan, Thomas is starting his own business, and he needs your help," she announced without preamble. "It's time you contributed to supporting the family." "A business? What kind of business? And why am I hearing this from you instead of him? He's been really busy planning everything out." "Look, we're family, and helping each other is what families do. He needs some financial backing to get started." I felt the familiar tension headache starting. "Mom, I've got my own family to think about. Rachel and I are on a tight budget with the lab work and taking care of Ethan." A few days later, Thomas called with that familiar excited tone I'd heard so many times before, usually right before another failed venture. "Hey, bro. Mom told you about my tech startup, right? I really need some cash to get things off the ground. It's going to be huge." When I asked for a business plan or detailed proposal, his excitement quickly turned to defensiveness. Why can't you just believe in me like everyone else does? Mom and Dad think it's a great opportunity. After he hung up, the pressure mounted. Mom called several more times, each conversation more strained than the last. My refusal to blindly finance Thomas's vague business plan became a major family controversy. That phrase, family first, kept coming up, somehow always bending toward whatever Thomas wanted. I eventually wrote a lengthy email to Thomas, offering to help him in non-financial ways, reviewing his business plan when he had one, connecting him with business advisors, sharing resources on startup planning. His response was a series of angry text messages about how I've always been jealous of him and how I think I'm better than everyone else with my fancy science degree. Days turned into weeks, and the tension didn't ease. Mom's calls became less frequent but more accusatory. Looking at our monthly budget spreadsheet, with its careful allocations for lab equipment, Ethan's daycare, and our modest savings, I know I'm making the right choice. But the guilt still gnaws at me, programmed by years of family dynamics where protecting my own interests was always painted as selfishness. I'm trying to stay focused on my research. We're at a crucial stage with our bacterial resistance studies, but family pressure has a way of seeping into everything. At least I have Rachel's support and the lab, where petri dishes don't guilt trip you about family obligations. Update 2, while scrolling through social media one evening, I stumbled across something that made my heart sink: photos of Thomas at some upscale club, popping champagne and living large with his girlfriend. The caption read, "Living the dream with my love #luxury life." This didn't sit right with me, especially considering he was supposedly scrambling for startup funds. I decided to dig deeper and called a few friends who were closer to him to see if they could shed some light on things. What I found out was a real shocker. There was no tech startup. Thomas was deep in debt from trying to keep up with a lifestyle he couldn't afford. He'd taken out multiple loans just to impress his girlfriend and friends, and now he was in serious financial trouble. I confronted Mom with this information. "Mom, I found out about the debt. Why did you tell me it was for a business?" After a long pause, she replied, "Yes, I knew about the loans, but Thomas is in a tough spot. His girlfriend will leave him if he doesn't take her on a fancy vacation to Europe. We can't let him lose her too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, you want me to pay for his vacation to help him keep a girlfriend who only wants him for his money? This is insane. I know it sounds bad, but he's your brother. He needs help. Can't you just help this one time?" "Just this one time has been happening all my life, Mom. It's always about saving him. When does it stop?" The truth came out gradually over the next few days. Thomas had racked up over $50,000 in credit card debt, taken out multiple personal loans, and was 3 months behind on his rent. All while posting photos of expensive restaurants, designer clothes, and luxury vacations. Some relatives had even started taking sides, sending messages about how I should stop being selfish and help family in need. But looking at those social media photos, taken the same day Thomas had called asking for business investment, I knew I had made the right choice in refusing to enable his behavior. Sitting there, phone in hand, I felt the weight of what had just happened. I had stood up for myself and my little family, but it stung. It stung because it meant admitting that things with Thomas and my mom were pretty messed up, and that maybe they wouldn't get better anytime soon. Update 3, so here's the deal, things just went from bad to a whole new level of crazy. It was a typical Thursday night, and I was just relaxing with Rachel when my phone rang. It was Mom, and the moment I heard her voice, I knew something was terribly wrong. "Thomas is in jail," she managed to get out, her voice shaking. "Jail? What happened?" "Slow down, Mom." She took a deep breath, then it all came pouring out. Thomas had been caught selling drugs. Apparently, he'd started dealing to make money after his credit cards were maxed out and his girlfriend left him. It was supposed to be a quick solution to his debt, but he got caught. He was desperate, Mom sobbed. "You know how hard things have been for him. He thought it would just be a quick way to fix everything." "Mom, that's not just a bad decision, it's illegal. It's serious. Why would he risk so much? I need you to help him. We have to get him a lawyer, get him out of this. He's your brother, we can't just leave him there." I felt a mix of anger and sadness. Mom, do you hear what you're asking me? He chose to sell drugs. He put himself in this position. Getting involved in this mess, it's not just helping, it's enabling him. But he's family, and family sticks together, she insisted, her voice full of desperation. Looking over at Rachel and thinking about our sleeping son, I knew I couldn't risk our family's future. Mom, he's got to face the consequences of his actions. It's the only way he might learn and change. The conversation ended with her still crying and me feeling like the worst son and brother in the world. But looking at my sleeping son's room, I knew I had made the right decision. I've spent the night tossing and turning, but Rachel keeps reminding me that we have our own little family to protect. Through all of this, I've learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that are most necessary. Yes, Thomas is my brother, and yes, it hurts to see him in this situation. But I can't keep rescuing him from his own destructive choices, especially when they've crossed into illegal territory. Mom hasn't stopped calling and texting, but I'm standing firm. Our family's future can't be compromised because of Thomas's choices. It's the hardest boundary I've ever had to set, but it's also the most necessary one. Update 4, things have gone from bad to completely upside down. Remember how Thomas got himself into trouble? Well, now it's somehow become my fault, at least according to my mom. Look what you've done. Because you didn't help him, he turned to selling drugs, she said right off the bat during her latest call. Wait, what? How is this my fault? You refused to help him when he needed you. If you had just lent him that money, none of this would have happened. He felt like he had no other choice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, that's not fair. Selling drugs was his choice, not mine. And just so you know, I've told everyone in the family about how you refused to help him. They all know what kind of person you are now. Over the next few days, my phone was buzzing with messages from family members. Uncle Steve wrote about family loyalty, Cousin Amy sent a long paragraph about how I've changed since getting my fancy education. Even relatives I haven't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my selfishness. Emma called me in tears. She's caught in the middle of all this, living at home and hearing Mom's version of events daily. They keep saying you abandoned the family, she said. But I know that's not true. I see how hard you've worked for everything. The stress has started affecting my work. I caught myself making basic mistakes in the lab yesterday, something that never happens. My research supervisor noticed and suggested I take a few days off to sort out personal matters. Frustrated and feeling cornered, I reached out to Aunt Diana. To my relief, she was more understanding. After I explained everything, she promised to talk to Mom and try to calm things down. She even organized a family dinner, invited Rachel's parents too, hoping to show everyone that there are different ways to handle family matters. Mom refused to attend, calling it a betrayal dinner. Rachel sees how stressed I am. Maybe it's time to step back a bit, focus on us, she suggested one evening as we watched our son play. She's right. Sometimes protecting your own family means being the bad guy to everyone else. The hardest part is knowing that this divide might be permanent. Mom's been telling everyone that I've abandoned Thomas in his time of need, conveniently leaving out the parts about his choices and actions. It's frustrating to be painted as the villain for refusing to enable illegal behavior, but I suppose that's the price of standing your ground. Update 5, after weeks of tension, hurtful words, and family divisions, things came to a head in a way I never expected, forcing me to make one of the hardest decisions of my life. If you're not going to help your brother, then I don't know if I can even call you my son anymore, Mom said, her voice cold and sharp during our last call. I was taken aback by her harsh words. Mom, are you hearing yourself? You're willing to disown me because I won't support illegal activities? It's not about that. It's about family sticking together, and you've shown where your loyalties lie. This conversation felt like a breaking point. Mom, my loyalty is to my family, Rachel, and our son. I've tried to be there for everyone, but I can't support the choices Thomas has made. And if that means you questioning my place in this family, then maybe it's time for me to step back. There was a heavy silence on the line. I could almost hear her processing my words, weighing them against her expectations. If that's your choice, then so be it. Maybe it's better if we don't talk for a while, she finally said, her voice a mix of sadness and defiance. Hanging up the phone, I felt a mixture of relief and profound sadness. I knew that cutting ties with my mom, even temporarily, was a significant step, but it was necessary for the health and well-being of my own family. Rachel and I discussed how this would affect our son and agreed that we needed to focus on creating a stable and healthy environment for him, free from the ongoing drama and negativity. Looking at Ethan playing with his toy microscope, a gift from Rachel's parents, I know I made the right choice. We're building something real here, a family where achievement is celebrated, where support isn't conditional, where love doesn't come with strings attached. Emma still comes to visit sometimes, usually when she needs a break from the house. She plays with Ethan and talks to Rachel about her college applications. I see her watching how Rachel and I interact, how we support each other, how we celebrate each other's achievements. I hope she's learning that there's a different way to be a family. This journey has taught me that sometimes the hardest part of growing up is realizing that the patterns you grew up with aren't normal or healthy. It's about making the choice to break those patterns, even when it means disappointing the people who raised you. For now, I'm focusing on my dissertation, advancing our research, and being the kind of father Ethan deserves. Maybe someday my parents will understand, but I can't keep putting my life on hold waiting for that day to come.